Seth, thank you so very much for being here. I love the work that you're doing, and I always appreciate you coming and talking to our families each year and helping us start the year with strengths and better understanding of EF skills. When we jump in, I think maybe a good place to start as we turn it over to you, Seth, would just be, you've committed your whole life to this. You've done 6 years of this amazing conference. Can we just start with maybe an overview of like starting with definitions for EFs? Because there's so many different ones out there, and I thought maybe this would be a good place to jump off.
Yeah, that's a great place to start. And thanks, Sam, for having me, and thanks for the work that you do, and thanks everybody for being here. As far as a definition of executive function, we have the brain here, right? And this is in this model of the brain. We have the frontal lobe, the prefrontal cortex, or the front third or so of the brain, and our brain develops from the back forward. And this part of the brain continues to develop until we're about 25 or 30 years old, and that's the part that helps us to execute. So, as far as definitions, you could say executive function is how the brain functions to help us execute tasks, complex tasks like writing a paper for school, getting out the door in the morning, going from class to class, doing this talk right now, getting set up on Zoom, heading out the door today, getting into the car, going to your appointments, a grocery store trip, cooking meal, playing video games, playing games. Executive function helps us to do anything that we need to do those sorts of things. So when we're going to do any of the examples I just mentioned, we need to plan, organize, we need to visually imagine what we're going to be doing, have self-talk to talk ourselves through it, prioritize the important things, and resist the distractions of the things that are getting in the way of the thing. That's called inhibition. Um, so getting started, following through, completing anything that's needed to do a thing, to get to accomplish a task or a complex task or to reach a goal. All of those things are part of execution, and the brain helps us to do all of those things. So different experts will define it differently. They'll say there are different, some will say there are, three executive functions or five or eight or 10 or whatever. And I say about 13 or 14, and it depends on the day and what I'm talking about. Like sometimes I'll list self-care as an executive function, even though it's not technically an executive function, but I lump it in because with the conversations I've had with thousands of parents over the years, like that is something that fits into it and is very important in relation to it. So self-advocacy, I'll sometimes talk about that as an executive function, even though it's not. But the other things, the planning, time management, the organization, the task initiation, those sorts of things would be more literal executive functions. So that's sort of a definition, but it's anything the brain does to help us get things done.
Yeah, I think that's really helpful. And again, especially for our kids, right? Young Scholars Academy is a conglomerate, a group, a village of a bunch of 2E and gifted kids. And that's where we see that struggle space a lot, where we have these students who know so much and can do so much, but they struggle with the getting things done. And I know particularly right now, this time of year, many parents, whether you're homeschoolers and you have maybe a different cadence or whether you're going back to some kind of school, we have a moment right now in time where I imagine many of you who are here right now are thinking, what do we need to do to go into the year? And I want to just screen share before my next question. And to everyone who's just getting here, again, the amazing Seth Perler is joining us this evening. I'm going to ask one more question of Seth, and then I'm going to open the floor to all of you. As you
Yeah,
know, Seth
drop your
Perler.
link in the chat.
Yeah,
People can
I'm gonna screen share and then I'm
this.
gonna dump it in the chat. Everyone, Seth Perler has the TIFOS summit coming up, the Executive Function Online Summit. And Seth, I'm just thinking, you have this conference you do every year. You interview hundreds of people, right? All these people. By the way, yours truly is on there. You have all of these people, and you're an expert yourself, right? You've got all these incredible folks. And as we go into this school year, right? I imagine most people here are thinking summer's winding down, transition time into the school year. What are some of the top strategies, resources, tips that you're learning as you talk to all these experts that you want to share with our families now?
Yeah, well, first of all, if people can pop, I'm curious in the chat, like when school starts for you, because some people have started already, but just pop in the date or the approximate date when school starts for you this year. And if you want to tell me if it's a non-traditional school or a public school or private school or Waldorf or what have you, I'd be just personally curious to know that. And Sam just put the link in there where you can register for the summit. But basically, one thing I want to say before saying that is about the 2E. So I have a master's in gifted and talented education, and I taught gifted and talented for 7 or 8 years, specifically GT, and out of 12 years of teaching. And what I really gravitated towards was the 2E kids. That's my favorite type of kid. I really like 2E kids. But when I was teaching, I taught for 12 years, and I was teaching for 10 or 11 years before I ever heard of executive function. And I have a master's in gifted and talented education. And I don't know if I missed the lesson, but I started realizing parents and teachers don't know what it is. And that's part of why I got into this, because when I started learning about it and going down the rabbit hole, I realized, wow, this is the thing that 2E kids that struggle, that executive functions at the heart of it. Really, I could argue that all kids that struggle in school, it has a lot to do with executive function. Now there are other things that are going on, like is the system itself or the school that the kid's in aligned with what that kid needs? Like that's something you could look at. Obviously, it's difficult to execute if your needs are not understood. However, kids who really have legitimate struggles with executive function, who are 2E, or who struggle in school who are 2E, have executive function challenges. So, and I'm looking at these chats real
And
quick.
I just want to interject real quickly one thing, Seth. What I want to say,
Be around homeschool.
number one, everyone, it's way more fun if you're able to join us on camera. If you're able to, no pressure, but we always welcome that. And number two, I just want to underscore the importance of being able to have this conversation. Right? We know our kids are these kids who have strengths, who have struggles, and maybe have a hard time getting the work done or turning things in. So please be thinking of the kind of questions that you're thinking of, maybe more globally as we gear up for Seth. So anyway, Seth, sorry, back to my big question. It's really, what are some of the top things that
Yeah.
you're thinking of as we get ready for back to school this year?
And thanks, and for the homeschoolers as well, as is absolutely appropriate for homeschoolers. Just not that you don't know that already. So as we get back to school, if we think about again, this part of the brain is still developing. Thank you, Jen. It is so odd talking to the void, and it feels so much more human not talking to the void. So when we are thinking about the school year and that this is continuing to develop until we're 25 or 30 years old, that is really good news. But we need to be thinking about what structures do we need to put in place. And if you're not familiar with it, hi, Catherine, thank you. If you're not familiar with the term scaffolding, you might want to look up the term scaffolding in education. So if you're taking notes today, you can look that up on your own. But with scaffolding in education, essentially what we're trying to do is scaffold somebody to help them go from where they're at to the next level to the next level. With executive function skills, what we want to do is we want to do as much proactively for the school year as we can. And that includes a lot of things. And for those taking notes, I'll list a bunch of things that come into mind, and some of them I'll go into more detail about. But if you imagine that this part of the brain is still developing and our kids need scaffolding, that takes away any of the arguments that say something like, oh, they need to just try harder, they need to work harder, they need to pull themselves up by the bootstraps, they need to focus more, they need to be more motivated. All of those sorts of things, comments don't take into consideration brain development, that it's a can't, not a won't. It's not that they won't do it. And some people might say, oh, but I've seen them do it before. Well, in the context of what's going on right now, they can't execute at that level. So do they have these skills? So it's for planning. So let's talk about planning. As you're entering the school year, we want our kids to have these skill sets around planning. So I, to 100% of my families, recommend the big giant desk calendar and putting it on the wall, front loading it and making it colorful, and putting, not everything, but putting important things on there, like test dates, doctor's appointments, fun things, that trips, and putting that on a giant calendar. That it's nice to have one for the family. It's nice to have one in the kids' study space. Also with planning, helping them figure out a planner that is not overwhelming. Like I don't care if it's digital or analog. I care, do they know how to use the planner to track things that shouldn't be in their head? Obviously, I could spend hours talking about that, but we want to get them a planner system. If, like the school planners, I'll often rip out all the pages of the school planner that have nothing to do with being a planner. Like the school handbook is often in times inside of a planner and things like that. So, but getting the planner slim down to just the upcoming dates in the school year, pulling out past weeks, everything that's not necessary, dog-earing pages, making it colorful, helping our kids learn the skills of using the planner consistently. And then a daily plan that I use a certain method that I teach, but it's basically when your child gets home from school, and even if they're in college, it doesn't matter, but thinking through, what do I have to do tonight? Ideally, right when they get home from school. They don't have to do their homework right when they get home from school, but to take 3 minutes to think through, what do I have to do tonight? How long is it going to take? And jot that down on a daily plan. So those are the main things with planning. Then organization. I talk about the SSS, the sacred study space, but setting up a great space for your kid that accomplishes two things. It is minimize for distractions and optimize for focus. So does your kid have a great space that they can study and focus? Doesn't matter where it is, but does it accomplish those things? Then we get into like a digital dashboard, and do they have a digital dashboard that's sort of optimized for focus, minimize for um, distractions, and how do we like optimize that proactively at the beginning of the school year with buy-in and ownership, ideally with our kid.
Seth,
So
let me interrupt for because you're giving so much so quickly, and I want to just
I
make
know,
sure
I know.
everybody, you're so good at this and you just do this all day. So I just want to unpack two big things. One thing I hear you saying is talking about almost this kind of horse blinders approach where you're saying, let's get some kind of planner, whatever it is, digital, analog, whatever, and we're going to get rid of anything else that's going to be a distraction, right? Zero in on a place for kids to capture.
Right. Yes, a planner should be just for planning. That's it.
I love that
And
because
they're often
sometimes they're
filled
not.
with, famous quotes and inspiring quote and stuff that's just clutter and visual clutter. Like, you just got to think, I want this kid to learn skills here. I don't want a pretty planner yeah. And
And then the other thing I'm hearing you say, and I love this, the sacred study space, the SSS, this idea that there's black and white. And I think for so many of our kids, life can be very gray. Maybe they're on the sofa, kind of working, kind of watching Netflix. And what I'm hearing you say is having this like really dedicated special space that's a workspace, and then maybe they have a play space or other space.
yes. Now, they don't always have to do their homework in the sacred study space. Like, if your kid is a reader and loves reading and they're going to read curled up in a ball somewhere, I don't care because they're executing on the thing. So that's the litmus test there. But they need to have a place where they can get down to business when they need to. So yeah, yeah, and I don't want them putting laundry on it, and I know some people use the kitchen table. That's fine. If you're going to do something like that, then you want to have, like school supply buckets nearby that are catch-alls they shouldn't have to go up and get something if you choose to make it in the kitchen. Like, how can you make that space so that when they're there, it has everything they need, they can get down to business, and when they're not, it can be used for the kitchen table. And so, but yeah, thank you, Anne, for putting that there. Those are the objectives of it. Yeah. And then other things is like doing a proactive email to teachers, and a short proactive email and resending it a month later. But hey, here's 3 things you need to know about my kid. Thank you so much for what you do. Shoot it out. Know that they're so overwhelmed that they're going to read it, delete it, but send it later. Hey, I know you're busy. Thanks for everything you do. Want to resend this. Probably sending that a couple times, because it takes a while for teachers to get to know all the kids, and they have a million IEPs to read and stuff. And as far as, we have some homeschool families. When I was talking about the sacred study space, having homes for everything, even for homeschoolers, having a landing pad and a launching pad for when they go out the door, even though they're not taking a backpack out the door necessarily, but still having the landing pad and launch pad so that they're learning to have a place. Because what they need, what the purpose of that is, that these kids are unprepared. So they go to the thing and they're not prepared because they don't have a system around being prepared. So a launching pad and landing pad is when they leave the house, they can grab their keys, their lunch bag, their sporting equipment, whatever they're leaving for, but that they start having a habit of doing that. Now, for all families also, as far as the habits, we want habits and routines. Visual, one of the talks this year, she goes so in depth around magnet boards and cool visual stuff, but visual ways to uh, sorry, it's my mom.
You're a popular guy right
Visual,
now.
she has like a weird ring. Um, but visual ways to put up routines and habits in the places that they are. So even if you have a teenager, routines in the very basic, simple, and obviously whenever we can get the buy-in and ownership, but having the routines posted or creatively designed in the bathroom, in the study space, by the door when they leave the house. Do you have this, that, and the other? So thinking through, and I just listed a bunch of things, but what you really want to do with executive function is you can start by thinking problems. Think back to last year and where were problems. Just brainstorm on a piece of paper all these problems. And those problems will help you understand. Then you can look at it, at least this is how my brain works, because this is my obsession is executive function, but to say, okay, this is a problem. How can we relate this to executive function through that lens to see what kind of a system can we build around this thing? Now, there are three things I talk about, and I'll wrap up with this, Mr. Sam. Systems, mindsets, habits, and routines. I know I'm talking fast, it'll be recorded, and I'll slow down. Systems to execute the thing. That can be planners, organizational systems, advocacy systems, email systems. Mindsets. The main mindset that we're struggling with here is I don't wanna, I can't, I'm resistant, leave me alone, get off my back, I've got this, I can handle it, why don't you trust me? Anything that is procrastination, or that is a skill that your kid has developed to avoid execution on a non-preferred activity. Oh, that's a good sentence. I wish I recorded that because I should make that a meme, but that's what it is. And so the mindset that we want is, hey, I can do this, may not be fun, I can get help, I actually like asking for help, it's easy now. And I can figure out how to get started, I can figure out what's good enough to be finished. But mindsets, okay, so we have systems, mindsets, and then we have habits and routines. What good are systems if you don't have a habit and routine? So a lot of parents are like, well, I know my kid has a planner. Okay, they don't have a habit and a routine for using it. So the skills, they have a planner. Okay, that's like if I were to tell you I have a motorcycle, which I don't, but if I had a motorcycle, I don't know how to ride a motorcycle. So I can have a motorcycle, but I don't know how to ride it. So do they know how to use the thing? So systems, mindsets, and then the habits and routines to with the systems until they become competent enough in the systems that they are using them in a meaningful way. So that's a good background shtick, and we can probably do Q&A.
Yeah, this is great, Seth. So I just wrote that down, everyone, kind of thinking of these high level buckets of the three elements, according to Seth: the systems, the mindsets, and the habits and
The
routines. And
trifecta, according to Seth. Yeah.
I love that. And again, I love this example too. I just want to unpack that quickly. You might think, well, geez, my kiddo has everything. Why are they failing? Well, they may not have the routine, or maybe the system doesn't work, or maybe they don't fully understand it or have a mindset where it's applicable to their long-term or short-term goals. So this is super helpful, Seth, and I really appreciate these three buckets, the trifecta. What I'd like to do now, everyone, is this. We're lucky to have Seth here. Seth's got hundreds of thousands of followers and so busy, and we only have a short amount of time with him. It's rare that you get to sit down with Seth and ask your questions. So I'd like to do this. We're going to open the floor for questions, and there's two ways we can do this. Number one, you can just raise your hand and I'll click the unmute button and you can ask your question. Or number two, you can write it in the chat. You can either write it to all of us or you can write it to me privately and I'll ask it to Seth. Okay, so we can do it that way. And I just ask again, this is a recorded session that's going to be sent out to our over 300 families. So if we can ask a question that maybe can be extrapolated a
I
bit, so
always
it's not.
answer them.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
that's
I know you will, but I'm just thinking, how can we make questions that are broad that maybe might talk at the higher level as well? So with that being said, families.
And pop your link in the chat. If you're not haven't signed up for TIFOS, it's my event this weekend. I'm gonna toot my own horn. It's good. We put so much heart into it. So Sam will put the link
I'm going
again.
to talk about that right now. Yeah, and I'll
Check
talk
it
about
out.
it again at the end. This is Seth's event again, everyone. This is TIFOS. It's literally in about a day, right?
So
So
I'm
this is
kind of freaking out because, as you all can imagine, I'm at like, a, I have a task list of a million things in the next 2 days.
So we're lucky to have you here, and I'm truly grateful for you. And I just want to say, everyone, like, I spend my money on this event every year. I think this is the most. I mean, let me do this. I don't usually do this when I screen share. I'm just going to show everybody this. Let me do the little view thing. Take a look at my toolbar. Now, if I go bigger, full screen, Hold on, I have to put on my other monitor. This screen's too small. Hold on, hold on. Can you
Meanwhile,
still?
pop your questions in the chat now.
Yeah,
All right,
I
Kim.
Tifos is right here. I keep it on my computer and I watch it all the time. All right,
All right,
questions. Go ahead.
right on, Heather. Yeah, ask your questions. You can unmute or raise your
Yeah,
hand.
feel free if you have a question, just flail it and wave at me or raise your digital hand and I'll unmute you.
And thank you for those who have your cameras on. You don't have to have your cameras on, but it is weird talking to the void. Yeah,
Yeah, Jen. Let me go ahead and unmute Jen.
All right. So, I've been to Tifos before, big fan, a
right on.
couple years ago. Anyways, so I have a weird question. Okay, so we have like the Kanban, we have the planner, right? How important is it to have like the designated time slots? Because I feel like that blows things up for my kid.
How old's your kid?
She's 13 now.
It blows her up in a good way or a bad way?
Bad way, where it's like, oh, I didn't achieve this at this time, or it's past the time, so I
Okay,
can't start now because it's late, right? And then it's just this.
that's a great point. Okay, so what I talk about in my methodology is Frankenstudy, and that's this idea of that we Frankenstein things to personalize them and customize them and tailor them for different kids. And not all kids would care about that like that. So, and your kiddo does. And what's happening is when that happens, if we think about this again, we're thinking about emotional dysregulation. So then when we're dysregulated, the prefrontal cortex isn't functioning optimally by far. So if you know that that's causing dysregulation, I would try to think of your own solution for it, and then think about how to get your kid to say, and this is what I do as a teacher and an educator, and how I can get them to say what I want them to say, meaning that they're going to have the buy-in and ownership, because I'm framing the conversation so that they're coming up with a solution, or I'm guiding them to a solution that I know will work. Because oftentimes, like, her solution may be like, well, let's just not do it at all. And you may know that if you scaffold her, you could actually get her to learn bits about doing something at some time, and that she can then add on that skill. So the full structure of the times that she's doing is too overwhelming for her. But maybe she can decide that every day at this time she starts her homework, and every day at this time she brushes her teeth and resets her backpack and gets it into the launching pad. And maybe that these are time estimates, and that you can use magnets or cards or whiteboard or whatever to think through. Because when I teach how to do the daily plan, which is kind of what you're talking about, I talk about what is the NOP, the number one priority of the day. So I want them to identify that. And then I want them to identify the other tasks. And research shows that they really shouldn't have more than about 3 to 5. Well, you might have 20 missing assignments, but you're not going to do them all that day unless you get super lucky. But you really want to pick the 3 to 5 realistic things that they can do. And when I have them write down the tasks, I then have them estimate how long they will take. And they're often very wrong. That's because they haven't calibrated that, but that's why it's so important to estimate time. They don't have to be right, but I want them estimating it, and I use timers to see. But if that is stressful, you're going to really back off or change the way that you do that. Then after we estimate the time, we look at the order. What do you want to do first, second, third? And I don't say what a lot of parents with really good executive function say is you're going to do the most important thing first. No, you are not going to tell your kid that. Your kid is not you if you have strong executive function, because that's what people do who have strong executive function, is the most important first. But I ask kids, there's basically 5 areas that, and there's other areas, but the 5 main areas I say is, do you want to do the most important first, the easiest first, the hardest first, the quickest first, or the longest first? You don't have to write all this down, but what I'm doing is I'm giving them the buy-in and ownership. Your kid's 13, she's still building the skills, so this is a great conversation to have with her many times to get her started thinking this way herself. And maybe she says the easiest first. That's what I like to do, the quickest first, because I like to get on a roll. I don't cross things off or check things off. I delete them or throw them away, or if it's whiteboard, erase it, because I just never want to think about it again. Some people like to check off, some people like to do this or that. Some kids are tactile. You can put on sticky notes and they can crumple it when they're done. So there's different ways to think through that. But to think through, you know, what's the thing, how long do you think it'll take, and then what order do we want to do them? And then you can ask her, what if you don't get it done in that much time? What do you want from me? And it's also important to think, like, what is good enough? Because sometimes you'll turn something in and the teacher might turn it back and say it's incomplete. And sometimes with a 13-year-old, with an 8-year-old, you just go back to the teacher and be like, I know, we've got bigger fish to fry. Thank you so much for your understanding. Just put the grade on you need to put on. That, you know, we have family time, we have this and that, and my kid really did put forth effort on this. And but to say to them, you know, if we did the whole thing, would have been working on it for 2 hours, and we have stuff going on in the family that's private and whatever. But really, what your stuff is your kid needs a life outside of school. And this stuff does take a very, very, very long time, a lot of times, doing the homework. So you're also going to advocate for that. But your kid's stress, when your kid sees, okay, this is going to take this long and they don't, and that stresses them out, you definitely need to get a solution that allows them to frame it under the frame of emotional regulated, that the regulation that you're getting dysregulated. You can use the words or not, but your nervous system, you can tell her, you're at 13, your nervous system is saying, oh my gosh, it's the end of the world when this happens. I can relate to that because me as a mom, when this happens to me, I feel like that. You know, when I'm in this sort of situation, I get the same type of feelings. You know, it may not be because of a time thing like that, but you have those same feelings. Your nervous system says, oh my gosh. But what can we do so that your nervous system says, you know what, it's good enough?
I think that's
Because
super helpful.
she is spending more time and energy on the emotional stuff and re-regulating and everything, and that's taking away really from the time that she could get stuff done more quickly. But
Thank you for that one, Seth. I think that's really helpful, and just being flexible for our kids. They're different profiles, different brains, and different strategies are going to work. I'm going to rapid fire through a couple of these. I've got a quick one. It says, if a middle school isn't giving homework, is having a planner worth it, or for other tasks, for things like chores and so forth?
yes, 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 yes. So to have a planner of some sort, yes, your kid is going to need to know how to plan. And one of the biggest things that I hear is, I am my kid's executive function. I wish I had started this a long time ago. So that is across the board. I hear that. So whether you're just using a big giant desk calendar and you're putting important things up there, whether you have a shared Google Calendar that they have on their devices, and you don't rescue them and enable them and tell them everything, and you say something very important is happening today, check your planner. They're like, just tell me. Nope. You have a tool, use it. And they see that it's hanging out with their friends, and things that they want to do, and important things, other important things, but that you're putting things on there that are important to them personally and that are important to their life. That would be like your doctor's appointments, or it could be, if they're not doing homework, extracurriculars, but definitely fun things. Like I want them to think, oh, I'm not just randomly going to hang out. I'm going to go hang out with my friends at this time. Like that and trust me, when your kids start having curfews and driver's license and stuff, if they don't know how to structure time by then and you haven't been teaching them planners, you're going to pay for it. I'm not trying to sound threatening or anything. I'm just telling you what I've heard from, parents who go through this. Um, it's very difficult to start building that then. So figure out what reasonable things, and you can start small. It doesn't have to be everything, but how can you sort of authentically make a meaningful experiences? I would have the big wall calendar, and I would have a digital shared calendar at the least.
Thank you for that one, Seth. I'm going to keep going down our list. We have a few left. And Seth, let me know your hard stop time. I want to respect that. I know you have a
Let's
million and
say
one things.
let's say 10 minutes.
Okay, okay. So I know you've got so much going on with TIFOS being a day away, and again, we're super grateful for you.
Yeah.
Another one came up, Seth. It says, we
Gail, I
homeschool
think Gail
and
put your hand
we
up. Go
more
ahead.
more unschool. I think this aligns with what you were just saying. We don't have assignments per se. How can we integrate EF skills?
Great question. Okay, so if you're unschooling, let's take unschooling. If you're not familiar with unschooling, imagine homeschooling where there's less structure and it's more about really experiential things, really authentic things in life. So let's say that that your kid is interested in horses and there's a horse farm nearby and your kid is going over there and working over there a lot. That you can learn so much from that. So an unschooler is going to look at that and say, how can we learn about biology with horses? How can we learn about speed and inertia and other science stuff with that? How can we learn about mathematics with horses? How can we do art and writing and reading about horses? So we're going to think in an unschool way of how can we use real life to, and if I'm botching this, unschooler, please tell me. But so either way, your child is still executing complex tasks. Everything that they are doing is a plan. Everything that they are doing is a project. So think project management. I love project-based learning, and that's what unschooling is. You want to give your kid as much structure as possible and as much freedom as possible at the same time, meaning that some kids really don't require a lot of structure because they can create their own. Kids with executive function challenges often struggle with that, and when they get to college, everything falls apart because there's no structure. That's why I work with so many college freshmen or end of freshmen because they've failed their freshman year. That is such a common story. But become same thing becoming a young adult if they didn't go to college, young adulting, gap years, any of it. It's all project management, and project management requires planning, organization, and creating structure to be able to do the thing. So using the horse example again, we're going to be planning times. We're going to be planning projects around that, whether they're creative or this or that. We're going to be creating deadlines around that. They don't have to be firm deadlines, but for kids to have a goal that they're going to do this at such and such a time. If they don't have the structure and it's too open, what I see a lot with like Montessori kids in particular, and this is not unschooling, but there's it's way less structured than traditional schools. And kids with executive function challenges, often in Montessori or other unstructured types of schools, once they get into seventh or eighth grade, big deficits start being seen and big holes that they've missed over the years. So there is a level of structure that's needed. You definitely want to give your kid freedom. They should have freedom in terms of like the content that they're choosing. If you're unschooling, the content that they're choosing, how the content, process, product, environment you can look up, content, process, product, environment, and differentiation you can look up if you're an unschooler. But what are they learning? How are they learning it? How are they showing their learning? But there should be some structures around that and conversations around that. And it can be very, very, very free. But there has to be some structure so that they're learning structures now. They're learning to build their own structures. They're learning to build structures that don't work. They're learning to have goals that don't work so that they can learn how to recalibrate from those. These are all good things. I'm not all about making sure that the structure is perfect by any means. I want them to experience it. And when problems happen, I often anticipate them. Like I can see, okay, this isn't going to work, but I don't tell them. I might ask them, how do you think this is going to work? And if they're really insistent on it, okay, cool. What if it doesn't? And what's the plan then? Okay, cool. And then when it doesn't, okay, how do we recap? That is a great thing. Those sorts of safe fails, being able to fail and things in a really safe way and be able to learn and grow from it. You want that stuff. So that I think is probably thorough enough.
That's really helpful. And again, it's just a good reminder that, yes, we might unschool or we might be in public school, but at the end of the day, having some kind of routine and having some kind of space so that when our students do arrive at a point in their lives where this will be important, that they have the skills required. I'm going to go to another one that was sent privately to me, and I'm really excited about this one. And it starts out with a lot of love for you, Seth. So it says, I'm a big fan of TIFOS, third year this year. Woo! I'm still having a hard, yeah, exactly. I'm still having a hard time to change my 12-year-old's mindset of I can't or I won't. How can I tackle it without hurting our relationship? I think this is a great question.
Yeah, that's a really good question. So one little very subtle thing in the question was how can I change? And that implies this sort of external that you're trying to change them, and you are, but you're really trying to influence them or impact them or help them create the change. So I want to point out that little detail there because I think it's important because many of us have grown up where, I know in my family, well, probably everybody's family, like we have these levels of dysfunction, some more than others. And I know in my family, like I was talking to my girlfriend last night, we were talking about, I was like, yeah, when I forget the exact topic, but something about um, that my parents really did a lot of solving it for me. And then when I left the house, like I mean, it took me years to figure out stuff that because they solved too much for me. There's really a balance between doing, you imagine any goal you have, that something you want to get good at. It could be music, it could be a fitness program, it could be cooking, it could be anything you want to get good at. In order for you to get good at that, you have to be uncomfortable. You have to be pushed past your comfort zone. However, if you're pushed too far, you're going to quit the thing. It's not motivating, it's not fun. And that's one of the problems with standardized education in a lot of our models now is that expecting, like getting into that gray zone can be hard when you have a class of 35 kids and everybody's so different. So, um, but essentially, in order to help your kid change mindset, it's done with a lot of open-ended questions, dialogue, and one of my favorite things is temperature checks. So temperature checks, there's a million ways to do it. It can be hot, cold, red and blue. Blue is cool, red is hot. Red light, green light, yellow light, 1 through 10, 1 through 5, showing on your hand. But a temperature check is, let's say that I were to ask you all, okay, in the chat, and you don't have to do it, but I do this with my students a lot in chat, like, what's your temperature right now for this session, let's say on a 1 through 10? And they say 8, 4, 3. And I say, why? And it's here's why I chose a 4. And what would make it 1 point better? I always say 1 point better because it's attainable, and they often come up with great solutions on their own. This would make it a whatever. And so, but a lot of dialogue around uh, the mindset stuff. Wow, why do you think that? What's your mindset around this? What's your temperature with this thing? Okay, why did you choose that number? And do you really believe that? Do you believe that all the time? Is there any other way that you could look at that? Are there other people who would look at that situation differently? Like really dialogue where you're not telling them, oh, don't think about it that way. Oh, it's not that bad. Oh, so these sorts of invalidating comments, like, I grew up with a lot of that invalidation from very well-intended parents who I have an amazing relationship with now, but there was a lot of the invalidation. Oh, you're fine. Oh, it'll be okay. Oh, just don't think about it. Oh, oh, you've got this. Why are you so worried? Oh, stop worrying. Or, these sorts of things are invalidating. Validation does not mean you agree, but it means you hear. And that's what we want to do is really guide the conversations toward, the temperature checks again are such one of a million good tools, but one of my favorite tools to really validate and listen. And then you can follow up with, okay, how can I be helpful? You can't, don't do anything. But some of you are going to get that, but you keep asking. Cool. Well, I'm going to ask you again in an hour. If you think of anything, tell me. I'm going to ask you tomorrow. If you think of anything, tell me. And eventually, because I've heard countless parents say that eventually, and it's often not very long, but when your kid realizes they're really going to be heard, they're going to say, could you do this? Could you do that? You can help me like this. How can I support you? Or how can I be helpful? Would you like to hear ideas that I have, rather than shoving your ideas down their throat and saying, here's what we need to do. Um, I see Gail smiling. Yeah, and you are not alone, obviously, or I would not be saying that, because that is what so many of us have learned, and we have to unlearn that as adults to get to that. Okay, well, what do you think? And in your mind, you might be like, okay, that's never going to work. And it wouldn't work what your kid's saying. So then you have to be like, okay, that's not going to work. How can I get them to, when that doesn't work, to say, okay, well, what if it doesn't work? What are you going to do instead? Or how can I help, So you have to really think through those sorts of conversations to get buy-in and ownership. Great question.
That was a fantastic answer. So thank you, Seth. I know we're at the time where you have to
Do
go,
one
and I
more
know.
quick one.
Okay, we can sneak one more in. Well, speaking of Gail, I had Gail next. So Gail, I'm going to click the unmute button if you want to. And thanks, Seth, for going a little overtime. That means a lot to us. Go ahead, Gail.
Oh,
I'm codependent. That's why I did that.
Well, I appreciate you, Seth, and I'm going to
oh, geez.
reciprocate.
Appreciate both of you. This was addressed a little bit, but I think my kiddos definitely have twins that are turning 10 next week. Yay. And they definitely need this support. But they're at the stage where they're still getting, if they have an assignment and a deadline, they're still able to crank it out and get there. But they have their own passion projects and they don't want to write a story. They want to write a novel series that gets converted to a Netflix series, and they've got these big dreams, and I need to but that never happens. That never makes it to the finish line.
And that's
So
okay, but I do have an idea for you. Go ahead.
I'm just kind of wondering like how much I need to beforehand kind of help them break that up and how much along the way we break it up. And I'm doing this in the shadow of an unfinished dissertation. So I'm haunted by this particular
Okay.
problem.
Now,
So,
what do you do to manage the dissertation personally?
oh no, I mean, I that's in my rearview mirror now. But I'm
Okay,
haunted
okay.
by the fact that it's unfinished.
Well, when you're focused on it, what do you do to manage it?
Oh, when I was
All
doing
the
it,
moving pieces, yeah.
um, it's not a strong suit. I've had a lifelong problem with divvying the stuff up, but
Okay, fair.
yeah. So,
Okay, so what you would be doing for something like that, like you'd probably be using a digital calendar or project management software, sticky notes or whiteboards or things like this, right? So the same type of thing as they're coming up with new ideas like that. That's great. I would probably just get Notion.io. It's free. I love Notion. There's a million things you can use, but Notion is a cool thing because what you can do is have them have a page for each new project. They want to write the novel, they put it in Notion, they put their outline in Notion, they write chapters in Notion. It has drop down so it can have the chapter drop down and dropped up so they can see all. If they have a project where they want to create this thing or that thing, they can put it in Notion. I have a thing in Notion for travel. I have a thing for guitars. Each guitar has its own notes under it. When my vlogs and videos, YouTube stuff, like I have ideas, a million ideas of vlogs I want to make or podcasts and stuff, and that's all in there. So, and I have these different pages for different types of things. Different hobbies and stuff that I have in my life. But for them to have a different page, they can put icons on it, images, all kinds of things. And it doesn't matter if they don't finish them. I want your kids, 10 years old, that's great. Fifth grade, sixth grade. I want your kids playing around in Notion, having these, they could look back when they're 20 years old and they're like, oh my gosh, I remember when I was making that thing. And it doesn't matter that they don't finish it. What is so important, Gail, is that they're going through the process of trying to plan. It's not about making a complete plan, it's that their brains are practicing it. That is what's going to build the muscles, so to speak, of planning those things out. And they may be a complete mess. You may help them clean up the ideas in Notion and stuff like that. But that I think is good enough for you right now. That'll have, and again, you can use any software. There's Trello, there's this, that, and the other. Somebody mentioned Kanban. You can do whatever, but just start. Notion is one great, or Google Docs, you know. But I like the drop downs on Notion because that's where they can word vomit ideas, but then it can drop down so that it can be. It's just a very easy way to organize the cluttery parts into organized parts, if that makes sense.
Seth,
Like I
thank you
couldn't
so
look at all
much.
my guitar notes. It'd be pages and pages that I'd have to sift through. But since it's all in drop downs, anyhow,
Now, you actually got me on Notion like 2 years ago, I think, and I still use it, by the way. So thank
I
you.
love it.
Seth, thank you so much, everybody. I think I can speak on behalf of all of our families when I say thank you so very much. And I just want to quickly screen share everyone. As mentioned, this was an incredible sit down with Seth. Imagine this plus all these other experts. This TIFO Summit is an incredible opportunity for you. It's all of these experts, and it's all free when you go. You can simply take the link that I put in the chat. You can register. And also you can go and explore all these talks for free. At the end, you can also stay for this bonus day. Now, what's going to be really special is that you're going to have the opportunity also to buy. And full disclosure, I always say I am an affiliate with Seth. So if you buy it through the link that I've shared with you in the chat, then you also are supporting Young Scholars Academy. This is an opportunity for you to get extra freebies, get recordings to these so you can access them all year. As I mentioned, I'm always reviewing different talks. And that's actually how I found many of the experts who come and talk to our Young Scholars Academy, families like you. It's
But
through this amazing talk. So
experts
Seth,
are
this
so
is huge. Anything that you want to share with our family, Seth, that you want everyone to know?
No, I think if you're in something like this, then you're doing, I think parents are very hard on themselves, and just know that you're doing the thing. You know,
You're
you
doing
are
great.
here. I talk about proactive, and that's just where it's at. It's you try to learn stuff about your kids. You get a million people, you get different opinions on things, and it can be very overwhelming. But just keep doing it, and you find the things that resonate with you, because those little nuggets are game changers. So
Seth, thank you so much. And again, everyone, please
self
check
care
out
too. Take
TIFOS.
care of yourselves.
Yeah, thank you for giving permission. I hope, parents, that you all feel seen and supported. And I hope that there were some little nuggets in here. And then again, if you check out TIFOS, click the link that I shared with you. Please grab that and go to either free TIFOS, or if you want to buy it and watch it all year like I do. I watch it every month. I watch a talk,
That's what I
and
recommend people
I mean, it's incredibly affordable, and Seth, it's helping so many people. So from the bottom of my heart, on behalf of our whole entire community, thank you for being here. Parents, thank you. And Seth, I cannot wait for TIFOS. I'm so excited.
Thank you. Take care, everybody.
Thanks,
See ya.
Seth. Here's that link one more time, everyone, if you want to click that real quick before I close the meeting down. And families, I appreciate the heck out of you. I hope that you feel some love from having people like Seth Perler come. How awesome was that? 45 minutes with Seth Perler. Holy ravioli. He's got 134,000 people. Did you see that on the website? 100. Look, let me just show you this real quick. I'm like, wow, Young Scholars Academy's got 310 families. He's got 134,000 people signed up for TIFOS, and he just spent 45 minutes with us. We are lucky. Wow, 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 wow. Okay, so anyway, I really appreciate you all. Love the support. I love this community. I love you all so much. And we love your kids. And I look forward to an amazing rest of summer. I look forward to an amazing TIFOS, and I look forward to an amazing school year with you all. So lots of love, everyone. Have a lovely evening, and we'll see you very soon. Thank you so much.